Welcome everybody, thank you guys for tuning in and appreciate the patience. This has been a little bit of a delayed project due to a crazy winter, but today we're going to be reviewing 5 sub $3,000 mountain bikes and giving you guys some pros and cons, which ones we really like and who we think the ideals will be of each of these bikes. So stay tuned and we're going to dive in. You were talking about fun.
Oh, about how it's more fun to ride a $3,000 bike than it is a $6,000 bike. You just get on and ride.
So before we get into the roundup, we would just like to thank Liat and Versus Tires for helping sponsor this project and make it happen. We've got the Versus tires mounted on all the bikes, so we had a test tire that was a consistent platform across each bike. And Liat, of course, kept us warm, protected from the elements, and safe thanks to their awesome protective gears. That being said, it's time to introduce you to the bikes. We have the Jamis Faultline A1 retailing for $25.99, the Norco Fluid FS A3 at $24.99, the Polygon Siskiu T8 at $25.99, the Vitus Mythique AMP at $25.99 as well, and then the YT Jeffsy Core 2 at $29.99. So everything is gonna be all right. The Jamis Faultline, that is a 120-130 millimeter bike. Definitely, I would say, is kind of the more conservative geo travel. It's gonna be kind of the trail XC option, I'd say. So Max, why don't you lead off the Jamis?
Yeah, I mean, a short travel bike, efficient pedaler, was great. Definitely not as aggressive as some of the other bikes that we tested, but with less suspension travel, it was super efficient on flowy trails, climbing. It's the best climber out of all the bikes.
Nick, you obviously also being a bit of an XC guy,
Yeah.
What were your thoughts there?
It's a good conservative bike. If somebody's picking up their first full suspension bike and they want something that's going to be efficient, quick in the corners, kind of that more steeper head tube feeling, I think this is a decent bike for them.
Yeah.
The spec is reasonable for the price. It comes with a pretty solid setup. And it's pretty efficient. It pedals really well. It feels very similar to a lot of those aggressive, shorter travel XC bikes.
Yeah, I think one of the bigger differences between those and the Jamis is the slightly relaxed seat tube angle.
That did feel
At 74 and a half.
2004-esque.
Yeah, so like one of the things that Max, you talked about was like, oh, this bike feels really long.
Yeah.
But then when you looked at the reach numbers, and I think the bike feels long seated.
Seated.
Right? Yeah. But then when you go to stand up, and the seat post is down, it has a little bit shorter reach at 460 millimeters. That's, 10 to 20 millimeters less. But because the seat tube angle is relaxed, it does give you a pretty long feeling reach in the seat, which is why, slamming that seat forward all the way is going to kind of help get you in a better position. But overall thoughts on the Jamis?
Man, if you're looking for something to just put some miles down on, really spend some time in the saddle, I think it's a reasonable bike for that. The seat angle, a little bit strange, kind of feels a little bit older, but it's made up for in that it's very efficient, that it pedals pretty well despite you being behind the pedals, and can descend okay.
Yeah, Max, I know you actually put it through some pretty rough and chunky stuff.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on how it descended?
Yeah, I mean, it was good, but like that steeper head tube angle definitely held it back compared to some of the other ones. Granted, it is more of a cross-country style bike. I just felt like when cornering on certain descents, like you wanted to be weighted back a little bit, but that steeper head tube angle like made the front wheel want to like swap. So like you had to be weighted forward, but on steeper trails, like you don't want to be forward. So just finding that balance point was not as easy as some of the other bikes, but to be expected on a bike of
that travel and classification. So when you were descending it or ripping around corners on a little bit flatter, more like XC type terrain, how did it perform there?
Yeah, it was great. I was actually quite surprised when I first jumped on it. Just the way it cornered and flowed and just was able to pop over little doubles. It's really efficient bike, and it rode a lot lighter than I was expecting.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So I'd say Jameis is definitely probably the cross-country guy pick if you are, not looking to push into like that aggressive trail enduro category and you want something that's a good pedaler, fun and snappy. That this could be a pretty solid pick in that range. But again, when you get into that $25.99 price range, right? The next bike is actually $100 cheaper than Norco Fluid, 130, 140 mil of travel. So you get 10 mil of travel extra front and rear. You are going from a 67.5 degree seat tube angle to a 65 on the Norco. All in all, a slightly more aggressive trail bike all around. Who wants to lead off the Norco? Sour Patch, did you spend much time on that? I know you rode the A1 and this A3 spec.
Yeah, I mean, the Fluid is obviously a great bike. It's won awards from pretty much every media outlet out there. This being a more on the budget side of things, it certainly showed in a little bit. Like that, what is it? 35 silver fork on there is a dog. It's just takes a lot of fun that you could be having out on the trail away. Like it doesn't want you to manual very well, but it does eat up a good chunk of the trail too. So it's just like a little give and take.
Yeah. He's a spoiled guy. He only likes the nicest stuff.
That's not even true.
But yeah, the silver fork is definitely, it is, I think, kind of a weak point in this build. And admittedly, there have to be concessions made to hit price points. And at $24.99, it is the most affordable bike. So there's something to be said from that. And I think when we went out, right, and we did the big shuttle day, like, I don't think the person on the Norco was at the back of the pack because of that fork, right?
No,
it's a capable bike.
It just makes it heavier, essentially.
Yeah, it is the heaviest bike also at 36.4 pounds. And I think we all agreed that the fork weight probably had a bit to do with it. And it also was a little bit harder to manual compared to the A1, which we have. And we kind of attributed a lot of that to that heavy fork. The X-Fusion shock I thought was pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, once we got it dialed in,
Yeah, agree. It
Yeah.
was great.
And the rest of the spec, I didn't love the the Tektro brake levers.
Neither did I. They're very long and curved.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that.
Your finger didn't really
they do
land.
work though.
They work.
They are incredibly powerful brakes, but yeah, just like the kind of getting that, and again, I guess we're coming from a spot, right, where we're used to riding a much more expensive bikes that have got all the creature comforts. And, so we're kind of comparing everything to these like micro adjustable brake levers that have a different angle and bend. And that being said, once you kind of forgot about that and you did get it where you wanted, the stuff worked well. And it just looked a little different and took a little longer. So it's like if this is your first bike or another bike in this price range with a similar type of componentry spec, it's probably not going to be an issue, but just something that would be nice if Tektro could make those brake levers a little better. But the Norco is one of the two bikes that had SRAM drivetrains on it. And I know as we were talking and just out riding and testing, we felt that there was a notable difference between SRAM and Shimano shift performance, right, on these entry-level price point bikes. What were your thoughts there?
Yeah, I spent more time on the YT, which has the SRAM drivetrain, and I just found it not to be quite like as precise as the Shimano.
Yeah.
Like there was some play, it would like skip around. The lever itself, I think on some of them are the SX shifter, and like the levers would bend, and it just wasn't as nice as the Shimano.
Yeah. But everything else that was at Shimano is SLX, except for the Vitus, which is an XT SLX combo, which we'll get to soon. But yeah, it just didn't feel as crisp or precise or as trouble-free throughout.
And kind of wandered as you were climbing. It'd go shift every once in a while.
Yeah.
Components are things that can be changed and upgraded during the life of the bike's ownership. The Norco Fluid, though, solid frame, starting point, place to get into a fun bike, right?
I think we've seen what that bike's capable of, and it's a super fun bike. It's got progressive suspension. It's got a very, modern design. I think the roots of it are there. It's just that fork that really holds that back.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the Polygon Siskiu T8. This is a 135, 140 mil bike, which kind of fooled us. We all thought this bike was going to have a little more travel just because of the look. It just kind of has a little bit of an aggressive look to it.
On Polygon's website, if you put 27.5 on this bike, then it goes to a 140, 150 bike.
Okay, yeah, so it is worth noting there's two builds, I guess, or wheel size options, you could call it. So this one here is a 65.5 head tube angle, 76.5 seat tube with a 480 reach, 430 chain stays, 34.8 pound weight, which was, you know, pretty smack in the middle of everything. So yeah, what do we got here? Linkage driven single pivot, Fox 34 DPS rear shock. Max, I know you liked this bike a lot. Let's have you lead this one off.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't blow me out of the water, but as soon as I hopped on it, it was very comfortable. It felt like very neutral stance. Immediately, like the first trail I rode on it had some jumps and some other hits, and it just rode effortlessly. So like I didn't have to put much thought into it.
Just hopped on it.
I just hopped on it and went, and it was great.
Okay. Sean?
I mean, it's same with Max. Like it's comfortable when you like hop on it right away, but
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it just nothing stands out to me.
Right.
There's other bikes that
There's also no criticisms really either.
Not that I can think of. I mean, not on the trails that we rode anyways. I remember the last time we had the bike, like the harsher, like quicker impacts, like I felt like the rear end would pack up and get rough like a VPP bike. But I mean, didn't really experience any of that on the trails that we've been testing on.
Right, yeah.
And like you were saying with how like some of us thought it had more travel than it does, it kind of leads you into thinking that it's a longer travel bike. So you are pushing yourself and the bike on bigger features that maybe the bike's not necessarily meant for.
Right.
So like you find those weaknesses, but that's not really, it's a 135 trail bike.
Yeah, that's true, right? Like there was definitely some times where, you know, we would still kind of feel things about the bike and you'd want to, you know, criticize it, and you're like, oh wait, no, this bike doesn't have 150 mil of rear travel. It's only got 135 out back. So I guess that's a little bit more to be expected for that range. But what were the highlights for you on the Polygon, and who you think it would stand out for?
Yeah, I think this is a good everyday bike. You know, nearly every rider could jump on this, be comfortable. It's got modern suspension design. Well, I think we all liked it. The only downside I saw of the bike was the same Tektro brakes that we talked about earlier. Similar lever, a little bit hard to adjust, not quite that same feel. But once you get used to them, it's fine. They work great.
Yeah, Shimano drivetrain. One thing that was cool is that this had, like the Norco, 170 mil dropper post on it, which was really cool. I think that was something that, you know I struggled with on some of the bikes, having, you know, 150 mil droppers on many of them. Polygon Siskiu T8, overall a very solid option, a bike that I'd say all of us would probably recommend and is worth people considering if they're looking for something in that 135 to 140 spot. Aggressive all-around trail rider that will kind of egg you on a little bit to charge it kind of hard. So next up, we will move to the Vitus Mythique AMP. Another bike that kind of surprised us travel-wise. It's a 140/140, and it kind of made me want to ride harder than that. 65.5 head tube, 77.5 seat tube, 482 reach on the size large, a 643 stack, which is the highest of the bunch, 445 chain stays, and the lightest bike at 33.3 pounds. I kind of can't believe that it was in many ways the longest bike, right? The longest reach. It had equally long chainstays with the Jamis, which is the longest at 445, and only 1 millimeter shorter wheelbase than the Norco, which was the longest. So I think the lightweight had a lot to do with it. I think the high stack height had a lot to do with it, but this was a bike I just instantly felt fast and comfortable on, and I wanted to just attack and push hard. I felt like it had a maybe what I would call like a racer feel to it. It was a little bit stiffer. It had a little bit more mid-stroke support for sure, but a little more feedback through the trail. not necessarily in a bad way, but it just let you know what you were hitting, like opposed to the YT, which kind of just like muted everything out in a very plush and buttery way. But like, I feel like if I was gonna go out and race, that Vitus would be hard for me to beat. XT SLX drivetrain, you know, so it's got that precise, good shifting. It's got the Shimano SLX brake, so best brakes in my opinion of the shootout. 150 mil dropper is a little bit of a bummer, but man, that was just a sweet bike for me.
I think I was trying to steal it from you at every opportunity because I was like,
yeah, I think so.
I was like, how can a bike that costs $25.99 ride like that? And from a brand that's not really that big, right? Like, this is one of their top
not
ends.
here anyways.
Yeah, true. And like, it's one of their top end spec bikes. So they kind of make a lower spec bike and you're not expecting big things out of it. You jump on it and you're like, man, this thing's fun. It pops well. It corners awesome, super stable in the bumps, and pedals pretty good. Like, it has the whole package.
Yeah, and for those unfamiliar, Vitus is a brand that is, you know, huge overseas. In Europe, they've got a big following, but they just came to the United States this year. And so this is the first one I've ridden, I think, ever. If not, it's been a very long time since I rode one, maybe at a media camp in Europe somewhere and forgot about it. But I was really excited to try one because I've heard so many great things. They've won so many awards over there. And so to get one on the trail ourselves and try it out is really cool. The RockShox Deluxe Select R fork, I think it's the only fork right with the Charger damper, which was pretty cool. There's some good highlights on the build and for the price on this bike. Sour Patch, what did you think? I know it's your favorite color.
I mean, it is my favorite color. Colors. I'm not biased or anything. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was great. Like, it feels shorter than it actually is. I mean, like, going back to how well it corners and everything. And I know on that diving board out in Prineville, I sent that thing the farthest, and I was not expecting it to be so just like absorb the impact, take the corner, and just stop right away. Like, it feels really good. Yeah. It's definitely fast feeling, but I mean, that could have to do with the suspension platform and how it feels a little stiffer, kind of. Yeah. You know, I don't feel like it was the fastest climber of our more longer travel trail bikes, but I mean, it wasn't a dog either.
I thought it climbed really well.
Yeah.
I think it just had a pretty good platform and it just sort of held you and didn't really bob a lot personally, Nick.
Yeah, I think the only bike that outclimbs it's the Jamis here. But you're in such a better seating position on the Vitus. It's a great bike. Like, it climbed really well.
Okay, all right. Well, next up, we will move on to the most expensive bike at $29.99, the YT Jeffsy Core 2. Also the longest travel bike with 150 front and rear. It has a 66-degree head tube angle, 77-degree seat tube, a 470 reach, 627 stack height, 440 stays, and a 34.8 pound weight overall. This particular build obviously is an alloy. It's got a virtual 4-link system that YT uses. Fox 36 float fork, which I know we were big fans of for the value comparatively, and the float DPX rear shock. G2 brakes, which I personally don't love, but I think did okay. NX Eagle drivetrain, 150 dropper post again, which, you know, they're not the only ones, but it would have been sweet to get a little more travel out of that. So Max, do you want to lead off the YT?
Sure, yeah. I spent a few days on the YT. One day I climbed probably over 4,000 feet, so I spent a lot of time climbing on this bike, and that's where I noticed the shifting, really. Okay. And just like how it wasn't quite as precise. But yeah, a little bit longer dropper post would be nice to see, like you mentioned, just because we're a bit taller and I have longer legs. But on the descent, it definitely made me second guess why my personal bike's so much more expensive. Just because it rode super well, and yeah.
Yeah, you're like, why did I spend $8,000 when I could buy this $3,000 bike and have as much fun, right?
Yeah, it was great.
This is our second budget, you know, affordable minded bike shootout, and I think every one of us comes away asking the same question, right?
Every
Like
time.
like the last 2 years, and Sour Patch, every time we were out goes, these bikes are so much more fun to ride than expensive bikes.
They're hard.
It's just so much simpler. You don't have to mess around with stuff so much. It's just like, put your air pressures in and go.
Yeah.
There's nothing to dial in. You
Yeah,
just ride.
just ride and have
Yeah.
fun. I
And they
know.
are fun.
And you have a lot more money in your pockets to go travel.
You can buy
cool
2 of
places.
these.
Yeah. What do you think of the YT?
YT is great. Like it definitely feels like it mutes out trail features, but offers so much grip because of that. So you can really go into corners a lot hotter than most of the other bikes in this, and definitely bleeds into the enduro category, right? Like you feel like you're like, oh, I could actually like push on this thing and in some gnarlier terrain and still get up the hill climbing back up. And it does have, I mean, for what, $300 more than the other bikes, $400 more, it comes with a much more solid suspension package.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the price of drivetrain and brakes.
True. And the
I would
G2s are a
argue.
big, to me, the G2s are the downfall in this bike.
Easy upgrade,
Easy upgrade.
but you're already at like the high end of this like price point bracket. So some of the other bikes, like you'll have more room to upgrade because you're not spending quite as much.
I thought this bike was a ton of fun. It's got short chainstays at 440. I mean, well, not extremely short, but like a little shorter than the Vitus I was just raving about. And I felt like the YT was a very fun bike, and for me was probably one of the most fun to jump and play on. I thought it didn't pedal as well personally for me compared to the Vitus. But it was definitely not far off or bad, and the switch is a lot easier to reach on that bike, you know, if you do have a big long grind ahead of you. But like, you know, I think a little less sag on that thing, and it'll be a good pedaler for sure. Those are the 5 bikes. Again, this isn't really a shootout in the sense of we're trying to pick a winner and a loser or anything like that. Instead, the goal here was to try to pick 5 bikes at an under $3,000 price point and just kind of showcase them. So I'd say Jameis, who would you say that's kind of the ideal bike for?
I think the XC guy that's looking to ride flowy trails for mini miles, like the typical bend rider, this would be an ideal bike for them. You know, that maybe they're looking to get into their first full suspension, they don't want to spend $5,000, this would be a great bike.
Yeah, it's efficient, fast, quick, but yeah, not going to be the bike that makes you want to get super gnarly on the descents, which there's a lot of people that they don't want to do that. So it's cool to not have to have all that extra travel and squish if that's not where you're going in your mountain bike life. Then Norco Fluid, Max, who's going to be the person for that bike?
Yeah, I think it's your aggressive trail rider, but someone still looking for like an efficient climber, but a bike that descends well. Like you can go out and put a lot of miles on this bike and not hate yourself, and it descends well. So yeah.
Just good all-around trail bike.
All-around trail bike.
Okay. Polygon?
I think
we summarized that one
yeah,
pretty
it
well.
falls in the same category as it's like, but something you can push maybe a little bit harder than the Norco. It just lends that little bit of extra in there.
Yeah.
5 mil extra travel, I guess, but
It just feels more
I thought they were pretty close.
They are very close.
And I mean, we have that slightly higher end. We have the A1, or I guess it's the top of the line A1 Fluid, and it's a pretty sweet bike too. And it can be ridden hard. It's fast and fun. But yeah, the Polygon's a sweet bike.
I think the Polygon felt a little more supple than the Norco.
Okay.
Even like having spent time on the higher end Norco.
Okay. Yeah, I probably would agree. Not by much, but a little bit there. All right, Vitus Mythique, Sour Patch?
Somebody that likes to go faster, I think. And just likes to just air things out, but it's more of a speed tut kind of air out. You're not going to be styling it as much, I don't think. Yeah. But yeah, it's a good racer bike.
Yeah, I really like the Vitus. I personally think, which we didn't ask yet.
Oh no.
I kind of think that the Vitus would be the bike I would buy. but I like kind of like that
Same.
racer fast speed is kind of like what I'm after when I'm out riding. I thought that it popped, like you said, it's not like the YT where like you can pre-jump and style, you know, all this stuff around, but like I could yank that bike, the Vitus, and get so high and go far, and I wanted to just ride that bike fast.
I feel like you don't even need to yank it. You can just literally like just barely pick up and
does
you're like
pop pretty
going to
well.
the moon.
Yeah, it pops very well, and I like a poppy bike. So I think it might be the winner in my book if I were to pick one to keep. Followed very closely by the YT Jeffsy. So who's this bike for, guys?
Somebody that loves to play on the trail.
Yeah,
Just
that's exactly what I was going
like-
to say. Somebody who just, and maybe the guy who only has enough money for one bike and really wants to ride it the biggest range of places.
I think it is a bike that you can grow into more than some of these other options too. Like the beginner can grow into like the park shredder, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would say that is probably true. I think, yeah, if you have visions of just wanting to get out and do some riding, but like you want to start eyeing up, you know, an occasional trip to the bike park or, you know, some shuttle days, that would probably be a bike that's like really worth considering just because of that, you know, 10 millimeter more travel. You up fork that thing to a 160 to get a little slacker head tube angle, you know, a little stiffer wheels, some better brakes. That thing is a shredder. Not that it's not right now.
No, it's a good bike.
One with the 36, like that fork has the biggest stanchions out of all these, so it's like a little stiffer. Take those bigger hits and definitely ride it a little harder.
Yeah, so props to YT also for making a really cool bike that looks good and is a fun bike to ride. So, all right, so I got my
Best
pick.
part.
I got
best
my
part.
pick.
You have $3,000 of hard-earned cash.
I'm taking the YT.
Sean's on YT.
Yeah, I don't need to upgrade it. It's great. the
Just
way
ride
is.
it as is.
Yep.
Max?
I think I'm YT as well.
Okay. Nico?
I think I'm gonna have to go with Vitus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Me too. I think we're torn.
I
I
did.
think we're torn. Yeah, I think.
Split 50-50.
Yeah, right on the line.
Yeah. All right, everybody. So there you have it. Our impressions on 5 really awesome mountain bikes under $3,000. We'd love to hear any questions you might have, any thoughts of another price point in bike that you think we should test next. We love doing these kind of things and having fun. I would say the biggest takeaway for the whole group, right? Maybe I'm speaking for you guys, but holy crap, these bikes are fun. It is amazing how capable and good bikes under $3,000 are, and like you said, it has us questioning why you spend so much money on a bike when you can go spend $3 grand and drop some sick trails and have some fun, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So congrats to anybody who's in the market for an under $3,000 bike. Good luck, happy hunting. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We would love to have you guys back for future in-depth videos and lots more. Thanks again to Liat and Versus Tires for helping make this possible. We'll see you guys out on the trails.